In the annals of American history, few stories rival the legendary Comanche raids that brought Texas settlement to a standstill. How did one tribe defy settlers and the U.S. Army for decades? This is the story of the Comanches, whose bold raids and fierce independence held Texas in their grip for generations. In 19th century North America, one region stood out as a bastion against relentless westward expansion: Texas. Here, the Comanche tribe rose as an unyielding force, their unparalleled mastery of mounted warfare redefining the boundaries of colonization. While other tribes adapted or retreated in the face of pressure, the Comanches stood firm, carving out their place in history through sheer skill and cultural strength. Their extraordinary bond with horses elevated their prowess to legendary status, setting them apart as the unrivaled masters of the plains. From an early age, Comanche children formed a deep connection with horses, shaping their lives around this essential partnership. Boys began honing their riding skills as toddlers, advancing from basic balance to complex combat techniques. By their teenage years, these young riders commanded exceptional control, executing maneuvers vital for survival on the plains. The Comanches' fighting style centered on a revolutionary form of mounted warfare, where warriors guided their horses with leg pressure alone, freeing their hands for weapons. This technique enabled them to perform intricate battle strategies at full speed. A hallmark move, known as hooking, involved riders hiding along their horse's side, reducing their profile as targets while maintaining agility and striking power. Armed with a variety of weapons, Comanche warriors could release up to 20 arrows in the time it took a soldier to reload a single-shot rifle, demonstrating unmatched precision even at full gallop. Their horses were not just mounts, but integral tools of combat and survival, offering mobility and cover during attacks or enabling rapid retreats. This symbiotic relationship extended to hunting, where coordinated efforts on horseback allowed them to efficiently isolate and take down buffalo. Their raiding tactics reflected equal levels of sophistication, often executed under the light of a full moon, aptly named Comanche moons. These meticulously planned raids occurred in the hours before dawn, taking advantage of settlements' most vulnerable moments. Warriors struck swiftly, achieved their objectives, and vanished into the terrain before defenses could rally. The Comanches' horse culture reached beyond warfare, encompassing a meticulous system of breeding and training. Warriors owned multiple horses each, bred for specialized tasks such as hunting, long-distance travel, or combat. This level of expertise supported their dominance over the southern plains, an era stretching from the early 1700s to the mid-1800s. Their territory, known as Comancheria, spanned from southern Kansas through Oklahoma and Texas into northern Mexico. Within this vast domain, Comanche bands moved strategically, following buffalo herds and leveraging their mobility to conduct raids and control key resources like trade routes and water sources. The influence of Comanche horsemanship extended far beyond their borders. Spanish colonials in New Mexico and Texas reshaped settlement patterns and defensive strategies in response to Comanche raids, while neighboring plains tribes either allied with or avoided them. When American settlers ventured into Texas in the early 1800s, they encountered a formidable military presence that dictated access to the region. This dominance turned the Comanche from a modest hunting band into a powerhouse that shaped the southern plains' history. Their seamless integration of horsemanship, combat training, and resource management created a system perfectly adapted to their environment. This adaptability allowed the Comanche to shape not just territorial boundaries, but the rhythm of settlement and trade across the southern plains for over a century. Their legacy underscores how integrating horses into their way of life produced more than skilled riders. It fostered a military and economic powerhouse. The effectiveness of their mounted warfare forced colonial powers and the United States to rethink military strategies when operating in Comanche territory. Their calculated violence extended beyond battle, enforcing control over both settlers and neighboring tribes through systematic raids. These raids followed strict protocols, aiming to neutralize resistance and establish dominance. Adult men in targeted communities were typically executed to eliminate threats of retaliation, creating an uncompromising battlefield dynamic where no mercy was expected or given. Captives faced treatment based on age and gender, with children between 3 and 10 often taken alive to either be integrated into Comanche society or kept as captives. Infants, considered too fragile to adapt or transport, were frequently killed. Women captives were subject to structured systems of integration or servitude, with some becoming part of Comanche families through marriage and others remaining in captivity under strict labor arrangements. Through this combination of military precision, cultural adaptability, and tactical innovation, the Comanche established themselves as an indomitable force that redefined the history of the American plains. The treatment of captives by the Comanche served strategic purposes, extending beyond labor and population growth to solidifying their dominance and instilling fear in surrounding communities. Torture practices, while brutal, followed deliberate rituals and served specific objectives in Comanche warfare. Methods such as systematic mutilation or prolonged exposure to fire were not random acts of cruelty, but calculated displays of power. These acts were intended to spread fear, crafting a psychological barrier that often proved more effective than direct confrontation. Stories of these practices spread rapidly, causing many communities to abandon their territories rather than risk the devastation of a Comanche raid. This tactic proved especially impactful in the case of the Tonkawa tribe, once a significant power in the southern plains. Repeated Comanche raids decimated their population, forcing the survivors into an alliance with U.S. forces. Leveraging their intimate knowledge of Comanche territory, the Tonkawas became invaluable scouts in subsequent military campaigns against their former oppressors. Comanche raiding practices reshaped the demographic and political landscape of the Southern Plains. Their systematic approach to warfare cleared vast areas of competing tribes and settler communities, creating a power vacuum that the Comanches filled with strategic control over vital resources such as water, hunting grounds, and trade routes. These tactics not only ensured Comanche dominance, but also influenced military strategies far beyond the plains. Neighboring tribes adapted their defensive strategies, while U.S. military commanders studied Comanche methods to understand their unprecedented success. The psychological impact of Comanche warfare was as significant as its physical toll. Their reputation for ruthlessness became a powerful tool, allowing them to maintain control over vast territories with relatively small numbers of warriors. This advanced understanding of psychological warfare ensured they projected power across their domain without requiring constant physical presence. Before American expansion gained momentum, the Comanches had already established uncontested control over large swaths of land through a sophisticated system of dominance. Their presence profoundly altered the power dynamics of the Texas Plains, particularly in their interactions with the Plains Apaches, who initially held substantial territory in the region. The conflict between the Comanches and Apaches marked a decisive shift in regional power. While the Apaches possessed strong defensive capabilities and a rich warrior tradition, they faced an opponent that had perfected the art of mobile warfare. The Comanches combined speed, timing, and psychological tactics to dismantle Apache resistance systematically. Their military strategy prioritized long-term disruption over immediate victories, targeting key elements of Apache survival such as food supplies, water sources, and horse herds. This calculated pressure eroded the Apaches' ability to maintain stable communities, forcing them into a prolonged struggle for survival. The Comanches' adaptability on the battlefield was another cornerstone of their success. They integrated captured weapons, including muskets and metal-tipped lances, into their combat arsenal, enhancing their effectiveness. Combined with their unparalleled horsemanship, these adaptations gave them a decisive edge in confrontations with Apache forces. In response, the Apaches implemented several defensive measures, such as fortifying settlements and forming alliances with other tribes and Spanish colonials. However, when these efforts failed, the Apaches were forced to reorganize their society, adopting smaller, more mobile units and developing new defensive strategies suited to their reduced numbers. The strategic retreat of the Apaches from their traditional territories marked more than just displacement. It necessitated profound changes in their social, economic, and military structures. Forced migrations to regions in New Mexico, Arizona, and western Texas demanded adaptation to new environments and the development of innovative survival strategies. Meanwhile, the Comanches capitalized on the resulting power vacuum, establishing a sophisticated system of territorial control. By creating a network of seasonal camps, monitoring critical resources, and maintaining awareness of movements within their domain, they ensured efficient deployment of warriors to counter threats or seize opportunities. The Comanche conquest of Apache territories demonstrated their mastery of comprehensive warfare. They systematically dismantled Apache support systems, forced population migrations, and secured control over strategic resources, ensuring long-term dominance. This approach proved far more effective than simple military victories, establishing sustainable control that influenced regional dynamics for generations. The transformation of the Texas Plains under Comanche rule had lasting implications for subsequent conflicts. Their methods of territorial control became a model studied by military strategists, shaping future approaches to frontier warfare. The displacement of the Apaches not only reshaped the power structure of the region, but also created new patterns of tribal distribution. These migrations had far-reaching consequences, influencing future interactions among tribes and shaping the landscape of encounters with American settlers. The legacy of the Comanches' systematic and adaptive approach to warfare remains a testament to their enduring impact on the history of the Southern Plains. The Comanches' control over the Texas Plains not only reshaped the region, but also influenced the trajectory of Western expansion and settlement. While some tribes like the Apaches were devastated by Comanche dominance, others, such as the Kiowa, chose a different path. Rather than resist, the Kiowa allied themselves with the Comanches, forming a powerful partnership. This strategic alliance allowed both tribes to thrive, pooling resources and military strength to confront mutual enemies. Riding side by side across the Southern Plains, their collaboration enabled the Kiowa to avoid the catastrophic fate suffered by tribes like the Tonkawa and Apaches, who were either annihilated or forced to flee. Through relentless raids and strategic alliances, the Comanches established their dominance long before Anglo-Americans began to settle the region. Their power inspired both fear and awe, compelling many to submit or ally with them to ensure survival. The first recorded clash between Spanish settlers and Comanche warriors exemplified their audacity. A group of mounted Comanches seized a herd of horses near San Antonio, an act that provoked a series of conflicts. One of the most significant events was the 1758 attack on Mission San Saba, a remote outpost defended by 35 Spanish soldiers. Nearly 2,000 Comanche warriors, painted with red and black stripes, stormed the mission at dawn. The warriors' equipment reflected both tradition and adaptation, combining scavenged European armor with leather and buffalo hide shields. Their weapons included captured muskets, traditional bows, and lances tipped with metal points. Spanish defenders, clad in steel cuirasses and armed with muskets, organized themselves in European-style formations around the mission's buildings. However, the Comanches' advanced tactics quickly overwhelmed these defenses. Warriors rode in coordinated waves, attacking from multiple directions while maintaining high mobility. Using their horses for cover, they released volleys of arrows and advanced swiftly to close combat, rendering the slow reloading muskets ineffective. Despite initial resistance, the Spanish defenders were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed within hours. After the battle, the Comanche warriors looted the mission, took scalps, and set the buildings ablaze. They captured the mission's horse herd, adding the resilient Spanish Mustangs to their own formidable stock. This attack not only demonstrated Comanche military superiority, but also set a pattern for future raids on Spanish settlements across Texas. Settlers responded by fortifying their missions, building stronger walls, and increasing military patrols. But these measures often proved insufficient against the Comanches' swift and unpredictable assaults. Raids like the attack on Mission San Saba became hallmarks of Comanche warfare. Their swift approaches, coordinated assaults, and rapid retreats with horses and captives disrupted settlements across Texas and beyond. The distances covered during these raids, often exceeding 400 miles, required meticulous planning and an intimate knowledge of the terrain. Warriors timed their attacks with the full moon, the so-called Comanche moon, which provided enough light for navigation while preserving their tactical advantage. The infamous raid on Parker's Fort in 1836 epitomized these tactics. At dawn, Comanche warriors breached the settlement's defenses, capturing 9-year-old Cynthia and Parker and other residents. Secured to a horse with leather straps, Cynthia and was taken on a grueling journey north to Comanche camps, where she was gradually integrated into their society. Renamed Najwa, she adopted Comanche customs, married a prominent war chief, and became the mother of Quanah Parker, who would later rise as a renowned Comanche leader. Her story highlights the structured system of integration the Comanches employed for captives, blending practicality with cultural assimilation. By the mid-19th century, Comanche raids extended far beyond Texas, penetrating deep into Mexican territory. Some raiding parties reached areas near Mexico City, covering vast distances with precision and efficiency. These operations required extensive preparation, including mapping routes with reliable water sources and grazing areas for horses. Warriors established temporary camps along these routes, ensuring logistical support for their long campaigns. The Great Raid of 1840, led by Chief Buffalo Hump, demonstrated the scale and sophistication of Comanche military campaigns. Following the Council House fight in San Antonio, where 35 Comanche leaders were killed in a botched negotiation, Buffalo Hump rallied 500 warriors for a retaliatory campaign. Armed with bows, lances, shields, and firearms, the war party swept across the Texas prairie, looting settlements and capturing hundreds of horses. Their campaign struck fear into settlers, forcing many to abandon their homes. The raid highlighted the Comanches' ability to mobilize large forces and execute complex operations with remarkable precision. Over time, these tactics reshaped the demographics and power dynamics of the region. Spanish and Mexican settlements fortified their defenses, while U.S. military forces adapted their strategies to counter the Comanches' unmatched mobility and effectiveness. The Comanche raids were more than acts of war. They were a systematic strategy of territorial control. By targeting settlements, stealing livestock, and assimilating captives, they secured resources and expanded their influence. Their dominance over the southern plains endured for decades, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the region. The legacy of their sophisticated military strategies and cultural resilience continues to resonate, offering a stark reminder of the complex dynamics of power, adaptation, and survival on the Texas frontier. The Great Raid of 1840 remains one of the most striking demonstrations of Comanche military prowess. With extra horses brought specifically for transporting plunder, the raiders struck swiftly and decisively, beginning with Victoria. Arriving before dawn, they overwhelmed the town's modest defenses, killing residents who resisted and systematically looting stables, stores, and supplies. The attack left multiple buildings ablaze, marking the town's devastation. From Victoria, the war party moved to the port town of Linville, where most residents fled to boats anchored in the harbor. Helpless, they watched as warriors looted warehouses and homes, seizing valuable goods such as cloth, mirrors, and clothing. Warriors even donned stolen top hats and fine coats, riding triumphantly through the burning town. For those unable to escape, the raid proved fatal. The raiders covered approximately 400 miles during their campaign, killing 25 Texans and capturing thousands of horses and mules. They loaded pack animals with stolen goods, including merchant supplies and household items, while experienced warriors managed the herds on the return journey. Despite the summer heat, they maintained a careful pace to preserve the animals' stamina. Texas forces, including the Texas Rangers and local militia, attempted to intercept the raiders at Plum Creek. Though some stolen goods and livestock were recovered during the skirmish, most of the raiders escaped, splitting into smaller groups to evade pursuit. The Great Raid's impact extended beyond the immediate destruction. Coastal settlements fortified their defenses, posting additional guards and building walls. Ranchers moved livestock closer to fortified areas and implemented round-the-clock patrols. Trading posts established warning systems using riders and signal fires. These adaptations reflected the need to counter the Comanches' highly effective raiding tactics. The raid also cemented the tribe's reputation as a formidable force, capable of coordinated large-scale attacks far from their home territory, leaving a legacy of fear and vigilance among Texas settlers. In the decades following the Great Raid, conflicts between settlers and Comanche bands escalated. After the Civil War, westward expansion pushed settlers deeper into traditional Comanche territories, provoking further resistance. Between 1865 and 1871, Comanche raiders struck over 200 settlements across Texas, employing tactics that highlighted their strategic ingenuity. Raiders often approached at dawn from downwind to avoid detection by livestock, dividing into groups to target corrals, buildings, and storage areas. Coordinating their movements with signals like wolf howls or bird calls, they struck quickly and retreated with stolen goods, livestock, and captives. The toll on settlers was immense. By 1868, over 400 settlers had been killed, with thousands of cattle stolen in raids that sometimes claimed entire herds of 500 or more. Communities such as Fredericksburg and New Braunfels responded by building stone watchtowers and maintaining continuous patrols. However, the settlers' efforts to resist were no match for the Comanches' mobility and expertise. In 1871, Colonel Ronald S. Mackenzie launched a new military campaign aimed at dismantling the Comanche way of life. His forces included cavalry units and scouts familiar with Comanche territory. Instead of engaging warriors directly, Mackenzie targeted their resources. His troops discovered and destroyed hidden camps, food caches, and water sources. They burned winter lodges and confiscated or killed over 2,000 horses in 1872 alone. The U.S. Army also relied on buffalo hunters armed with long-range rifles to decimate the herds that the Comanches depended on for food, shelter, and tools. By 1873, the buffalo population in Texas had been nearly eradicated, depriving the Comanches of their primary resource. The loss of the buffalo had devastating consequences. Without access to dried meat and warm buffalo hide shelters, Comanche bands faced starvation and exposure, especially during the harsh winter months. Army patrols discovered abandoned camps littered with signs of desperation, meager shelters, minimal food supplies, and evidence of failed hunting attempts. By 1874, many Comanche bands, weakened by hunger and resource depletion, began moving to reservations. Their once vast territory had shrunk to isolated pockets of resistance. The Red River War of 1874 to 1875 marked the final chapter of Comanche resistance. Mackenzie's forces systematically destroyed the remaining Comanche camps and captured over 120 warriors. With their food sources depleted, their horses confiscated, and their ability to resist broken, the Comanches were forced to abandon their nomadic lifestyle. By 1875, their power was effectively extinguished, bringing an end to centuries of dominance on the southern plains. This combination of relentless military pressure, resource deprivation, and strategic adaptation succeeded where decades of direct conflict had failed. The Great Raid and subsequent campaigns against the Comanches underscore the tribe's remarkable resilience, ingenuity, and the devastating cost of their eventual defeat. Their legacy endures as a testament to their extraordinary military capabilities and the profound cultural impact of their resistance. Colonel Ronald Mackenzie's 1874 campaign marked a turning point in the struggle to subdue the Comanches. Deploying 5 cavalry companies across the Texas Panhandle, Mackenzie implemented a strategy of relentless pressure and calculated disruption. His forces established forward camps, well-stocked with provisions for extended operations, and relied on scouts to map critical resources, including water sources, trails, and likely Comanche campsites. By patrolling mountain passes and key watering holes, Mackenzie's troops systematically restricted Comanche movement, effectively confining them to increasingly smaller areas. Supply wagons followed the cavalry, enabling sustained operations even in remote and rugged terrain. This continuous pursuit extended through the winter months, targeting a period when Comanche bands traditionally sought shelter in protected canyons. The destruction of buffalo herds proved to be the most decisive blow. Professional hunters, armed with powerful .50 caliber rifles, slaughtered over 100,000 buffalo in the Texas Panhandle during 1874 alone. These hunts devastated the Comanches' primary resource base. Each buffalo had supplied meat, hides, bones, sinew, and fat essential for survival, and their absence left the Comanches unable to sustain their nomadic lifestyle. Evidence of this hardship emerged as Army patrols discovered abandoned camps filled with makeshift teepees made from canvas rather than traditional buffalo hides. Campsites revealed desperate measures, with remains of small game and other unusual food sources indicating dwindling supplies. Winter compounded these challenges, as traditional food stores were exhausted, leaving many to face starvation. By late 1874, the effects of sustained military pressure and resource deprivation drove major Comanche bands to surrender. Records from Fort Sill document the arrival of approximately 500 Comanches that fall, accompanied by just 280 horses, a dramatic reduction from their once vast herds. Their supplies were depleted, their weapons few, and visible signs of malnutrition and inadequate winter clothing underscored the severity of their plight. Life on the reservation brought profound changes to the Comanche way of life. The U.S. government assigned small farming plots to families, but most Comanches had no experience with agriculture, and the tools and training provided were insufficient. Government rations were unreliable, with the weekly flour allowances and monthly beef distributions often delayed, spoiled, or inadequate. Medical supplies were scarce, and reservation life undermined traditional leadership structures. Warriors who once commanded raids and battles found themselves managing ration distribution and mediating with Indian agents. Younger generations, raised to be hunters and fighters, were confined to small plots of land with no opportunities to practice the skills that had defined their culture for centuries. The final surrender of free Comanche bands in 1875 marked the end of their dominance over the southern plains. The vast territory they once controlled, spanning hundreds of thousands of square miles, was reduced to designated reservation lands in Indian Territory. Within a single generation, the combination of relentless military campaigns, systematic resource depletion, and enforced settlement transformed the Comanches from a powerful nomadic warrior society to one reliant on government support. The collapse of their traditional way of life serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of westward expansion and the calculated efforts to subjugate indigenous peoples. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos from us. What do you think about today's topic? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found the video helpful, feel free to share it with your friends and family. We hope you had a great time. See you in the next video with even more exciting content. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.